What are the major trends and challenges shaping the food and beverage space, particularly in the wellness orientated landscape of hotels?
Very sensible question, Roger, and thank you for having me and inviting me to speak on this matter. Trying to sort of identify those major and trends and also be mindful of the challenges. The major trends that I sort of find is this sort of trend around healthier and cleaner, more sustainable, premium products. And then this sort of last piece that I like to project is the social responsibility, or sorry, socially responsible products in line with the mantra, good for me, good for the planet, and quality over quantity. And then the challenge part of all of that, because it's all great hearing about the wonderful parts about that, is um, that whilst the rise of the sort of conscious consumer signals progress, it also represents challenges, and as such, there's this increased spread of misinformation. That there's a requirement for the addressing the sort of systematic or systemic, should I say, inequalities in access to healthy food and navigating the complexities of sustainable food sourcing. And without sounding overly dramatic around those challenges, I think innovations in technology and education, alongside strong commitments to shared responsibility, offer pathways to address these issues.
You talk about how healthier options, cleaner options, sustainable. Getting specifically into, let's say, healthier options, how much of a need have you seen for addressing food allergies, food intolerances, a preference to, eat in a particular way? How much of that is changing the landscape of food and beverage menus, for example? I know when I go now, particularly to any hotel restaurant, one of the first questions is, do you have any allergies?
It's a contentious point, and I'll say contentious for me personally, because picking up on your last point is I find now the communication piece between, let's say, the supplier and the consumer, or the customer there, is we're having all these gateways put in front of our dining experience, and stepping away from this component as a subject. What are we all doing going out? What are we all trying to achieve when we are out? It's a social experience. It's a bringing together of people. It's for mutual enjoyment. And then what happens is the engagement at the table, or the environment where one's placing one's order is, you go through this gateway, and do or don't you have an allergy? I have a daughter who doesn't have an allergy, but she has an intolerance. So, now we're starting to slice and dice. So that suddenly gets people on their sort of tender hooks. Then we get the manager come over. And, if I go back to the beginning of your question there, it's becoming more and more prevalent in dining experience. And I think as we're in the business of delivering experiences to consumers, customers, and the persons listening to this report, I'm sure, will be coming from all different walks of life within the hospitality industry. So QSR to luxury, is ultimately we're here to deliver an experience, and we've got to manage those legal responsibilities and requirements and guidelines now, in terms of having information, training team members to convey that information around the food that we have to offer, but not to the detriment of the meal experience.
Well, speaking to, it being a contentious issue, I was in London last weekend at a restaurant, and to make an order, because I sit in the gluten free category, preferring to eat gluten-free. I could not make an order at this particular restaurant to the waiter. They had to send over the manager to take the order. And I'm like, look, I don't have a contagious illness. So I think you're absolutely right that the very topic can be contentious in the way that actually it's from the service side, how it's executed and how it influences the whole guest experience.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is, it sounds to me, as you just explained, you've got an intolerance that needs to be recognized, and we need to make sure that, again, beyond the emotions that we're trying to deliver, wherever the restaurant is, whatever the context is, and the meal experience we're trying to deliver, is it gets to you in a safe and hospitable manner. But the driver of the whole experience is hospitality, not your intolerance. And I think it's just about putting these things into the right order, recognizing them, prioritizing them. And I personally, hold management accountable for this. It's that connectivity between what one's got to do and needing to do, and how that interacts with the consumer. And if that's not well managed, you have a scenario that you've just discussed. And I've been there on many occasions, and it's happened to me with my daughter, who has a gluten intolerance too.
What specific F&B data points stood out for you in the latest wellness real estate report?
The one that stood out for me, and I thought was actually a little controversial, was the one that related to to beverages, and it was a beverage data, um, and and so but beyond the fact that we've talked about other components of the wellness experience now, and I'm going to suggest less so to my generation, but maybe to the slightly younger generation, without getting involved in a sort of socio-economic conversation. But there are now movements with mindful drinking or sober curious gaining popularity. And I'm in the business of supporting businesses with information and an intelligence on these matters, and research indicates that alcohol consumption has declined with the sort of younger generations drinking less, and as they show greater interest in holistic wellness and health, that there's been this situation with the decline. I mean, probably I'm a bit pompous to say that because I'm in the industry, I think it's obvious to many, as one is doing one's domestic shopping. But then in the commercial world, the beverage industry has certainly recognized this, and they're taking actions around this, the functionality and the sort of healthy beverage business is now on the rise, and the zero, low alcohol, ready to drink offerings, the terminology, or there's lots of terminology flipped around, but I think it's the no low movement, NOLO movement, is booming. And globally, we see an array of interesting new product developments, packaging innovations, and surprising mergers and acquisitions, with the lines between the health movement, the low and non-alcoholic category, and then the wider drink industry becoming increasingly converged as they sort of pivot to a growing consumer demand.
So, do you believe in order to counteract the this movement to a healthier alternative to drinking alcohol, and that's where margins typically were found in the sale of beverages. Do you think that hotels need to be more creative when it comes to their, drinks offer? We just spoke about food from a, food intolerance point of view. So obviously making sure they've got gluten-free, beers, stock. Then when you think about, healthier drinking, this is more creative smoothies packed with nutritional value that actually, you can sell at a premium, so
Yes.
you can make the margins up, that you may be losing in the alcohol, classic, let's say classic alcohol, hard liquor area, in offering, healthier options that are just, jam-packed with taste, jam-packed with nutritional content, added in nutritional. And we've seen that as well in a lot of also, obviously, many of the F&B outlets you see around New York, London, and
Yes.
other places around the world.
Again, sort of referring back to your previous question, the data point that stood out to me, and sort of I get going a little bit granular on there. I was surprised to see, the beverage revenue shifting away from bars and room service. Now, I'll be honest, I understand the room service piece because I'm a big believer on social experiences, and I think room service and consumption of beverages, and I'm referring to alcoholic ones, is a little bit of a sad business. But this was, a point that stood out on the minor and the no wellness. Um, but then to your point that you just made there, I am a big believer, and it's a big part of my business, talking about and identifying and showing the bar forward about bars today must go beyond the basics. You need to be crafting immersive experiences with something unique drinks. I regret to say it, pull out the phone and Instagrammable atmospheres and experiences. And that there is a statement to be made that bars have cemented their role as experiential destinations in their own right in the hospitality sector, setting new standards and transporting guests to enchanting worlds that stimulate their senses. And a few years back, I can think of Zuma, for example, and I wouldn't necessarily go to Zuma for my sort of evening snack or dinner. I would be a broken man if I did. But what I would do is go and have a snack at the bar at Zuma, and they had the most incredible and inventive beverages and engaging staff. And again, to my earlier part was it's crafted in immersive environments, and this is. And I believe this is the way forward. And simply offering a wine list or standard spirits no longer cuts the mustard. Bars must and need to specialize in sort of curated craft beer selections, narrative-driven wine lists, and eclectic spirit selections. It's not complicated. It comes back to what I was referring earlier on, and that's that management piece, delivering the message through effective training, returning back, and making sure team members understand the context and purpose of these experiences related to the sort of customer experience.
Interesting, just looking at one of the data points, and particularly the F&B profit conversion, because it seems that minor wellness, has a tendency to outperform major, yeah, albeit by a few percentage points, nothing significant there, but minor wellness has shown at a property level to outperform major on particularly when we're looking at the bottom line, GOP perspective as a percentage. What are your thoughts on that? Is it, minor wellness can just be a little bit more economical, with its food and beverage offering, and they can eke away a little bit more profit points compared to major, which would typically be in a more, expansive, even luxury property. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a big question and across a multitude of different standards of offering. But my takeaway, and I did read through that piece and paused and I questioned it, and my assumption, having looked at that, is that ultimately those offerings have such, or have such, I was going to say have such a low base. They have a lower cost base in the context of food and beverage costs. labor, and all the other components that will come to delivering an experience, that they're able to convert at a higher rate. That needs further detailed and sort of granular assessment, because there's also an argument to say that with, let's say, some sort of human or a greater level of human capital, and that could be the numbers of, as well as their intelligence in terms of delivering and expediting experiences in the full service. You should be also be able to drive the revenue and ultimately the bottom line exponentially. So it needs some assessment, but my sort of simple one-liner would be they have a lesser cost base and so able to convert.
We say longevity is the new wellness. On that basis, how do you think wellness orientated properties or hotel properties that have a strong wellness component, how do you think that they should rethink their F&B strategies to reflect this change and trend in the marketplace?
So, great question. And I think in a world marked by sort of rising health awareness, environmental challenges, and shifting cultural expectations, food has become more than a source of subsistence or pleasure. It's a vehicle for health, connection, and purpose. And today, there's a demand for food that supports people's well-being, reflecting the societal wave towards holistic health and planetary well-being. Businesses that prioritize well-being through food offerings are well positioned to meet evolving customer demands. Now, that doesn't give you too much in terms of specific strategies, but mindful of properties that are prioritizing well-being through their offerings are going to be well positioned, better positioned to meet their evolving customer demands. It's looking at your client base of tomorrow, but also satisfying those of today. And in terms of market share, you've got to look at the opportunities that are on the table. And the hospitality industry is positioned to play a central role in this whole well-being transformation, and as a global touch point for millions of individuals daily. It has the power to shape food systems, advocate practices that enhance holistic well-being by embracing this component. Hospitality businesses can drive growth and innovation as well as making meaningful contributions to society. And that means returning clients, returning footfall, and repeat business. And I think it's a win-win. That said, as a general strategy, I think there are various other routes that one can go down, depending on your particular market and the sector that one's in, but it cannot be ignored now. And if you're going to ignore it, you're leaving dollars, pounds, euros, whatever on the table.
What do investors, developers, and operators gain from reading the Wellness Real Estate Report?
Hats off to you for developing and presenting a fantastic report. I have read through from cover to cover with great interest the data, the inference that this data presents, gets one's cogs ticking over in one's mind, particularly as we've been referring to earlier on some of this beverage piece or the movement of certain components of the F&B P&L sheets. But coming back to the fact of what are investors, developers looking for, and that they're looking for quality data that's going to service their investment KPIs, that's going to give them informative and quality data that they can make it rational insights, and informed decisions. And my takeaway, having read this report, is I'm going to be using the data myself and the insights that you've highlighted to again identify with my clients and my customers and my opportunities how certain impacts or certain actions are going to develop and create certain impacts around the P&L and the financial performance of hospitality operations.